when I was an undergrad at Drexel, part of what we had to do is we had to write our teaching philosophy. And my philosophy was that a busy classroom where students are doing inquiry-based science is going to be a classroom where there are minimal behavior problems because the kids will be so invested in what they're doing that they won't have time to act out. I think I've discovered that at times with something as simple as an eyedropper, a cup of water, and a penny discussing surface tension. And I've also found out through many, many poor experiences that even something that seems so hands-on and engaging needs to be structured a little bit more, as suddenly kids begin to get squirted with eyedroppers full of water and rather than filling up a penny. And having that sort of thing happen kind of changed the way that I was approaching what I wanted to do for next year. I have these very grand ideas of what I can do and what things will look like in the end, but sort of, I guess, laying out the step-by-step process that needs to happen in order to get to those ideas has really driven me to push harder than I ever have in the classroom as far as preparation goes.
Yes. My favorite was a mentally challenged student who was at like a second or third grade level, and I actually was working with her a lot after school, and I had her eventually actually outperform her twin sister who was actually in the AP curriculum. So it was a student who normally gets like 94s and 95s on everything, and she actually ended up doing better than her on an exam, on a blind exam, and that made me very, very, very happy. I think that was by far my favorite moment in my whole entire teaching career, but that was like maybe 2011. But that was definitely my favorite moment.
It generally has to do with when I am able to get kids to reflect positively on an experience or reflect critically on an experience, whether that be academic or behavioral. When a child says like, "Oh, I really understand now. I get it," and you see that they get it because they demonstrate that they've gotten it either through an assessment or through a change in their behavior. You actually see that they've had like an aha moment, and that's just very, very refreshing. It's what makes the job worthwhile. It's what I do.
How often does that happen? Regularly? Do you feel this? Do you have that experience?
It's happened a lot. It's happened a lot more the more years of experience I have.
The more experience.
Right. The longer I've been doing this job, the more frequent it becomes.
Right.
It's not every day. It wouldn't be as meaningful if it happened every day. But it happens enough to keep me charged throughout the year.
So yeah, I taught in two different schools. One of the first school I taught, actually that was my student teaching at Masterman High School. This is one of the best schools in Pennsylvania. The students were well prepared. They come from well-to-do background. They were very disciplined, and the students were very receptive. They were hardworking. They motivated me by their responses helped me to teach them and prepare better. But I went to another school that they were I had a couple of students who had behavior issues, and that was a big challenge, to want to help the students and also to take good control of your classroom. That's always a big challenge.
What are some challenges?
Challenges are manifold, but one that I think about the most is recognizing when something that I've planned out meticulously isn't going to work, and then having to redo that entire plan over again. It's very frustrating to have to reconcile that lost time, but have to still find the energy to continue revamping things so that you don't lose ground with the kids. Working with adults is very frustrating. I think that it's very difficult for people to be on the same page when there isn't time to talk about it. There's not a lot of time for the adults to come together in the building and really hash things out and really talk things out. So everybody's sort of just moving in their own direction. And if we just had the time, we as professionals could come together and really plan and deliver. And not just a lot of the setbacks I find that are happening in education are occurring because there's just insufficient communication amongst adults.
I think my particular principal was very supportive. He was a very great guy. Still to this day, I have a lot of respect for him. It was more so as an administration pushing rules onto him and him having to push those rules down. And then not having any say in any of the rules. So they would come up with rules for teachers, not just for me, for everybody. These rules would come down from people who either A, never taught in a classroom in Philadelphia in a high-needs school, B, taught a completely different subject that had nothing to do with anything that I've taught or the experiences I've had. And then they sit there and then they give you ideas like, oh, do this, do this, do this, and they don't really respect what you have done or what you have accomplished or look at what you've done. To say that, hey, you should do this, they just blanket, hey, this is a great teaching practice, all teachers have to do this now, instead of, hey, if you're struggling, maybe you should try this out and it'll help you get better. And just little things like that just started building up and building up and building up. And I would frequently get in trouble because I'm not a very good, what do they call it, sweat the small stuff type of guy. So I'm the type of person that, like, my main focus was get in there, get these kids to get from, like, second or third grade mathematical understanding and just boost them as high as I possibly could. Whether that was only second to fifth grade, that made me happy. Second to, eighth grade, I'm extremely happy. If it was seventh to 12th grade level, whatever boost or gain I could get, that's what I went in there for. That's what I aimed for. I went in early, tutored kids. I tutored kids during lunch. I tutored kids after school. Any way that I could really get that.
I came into teaching because I saw that there was this tremendous need to educate the children who particularly come from low-income areas or areas where they're not receiving a lot of federal and state resources or local resources to be able to succeed. And I think that we have a large portion of our population in this country that is being neglected and is being ignored, and but deserves every chance as an American to be able to compete with everybody else on an equal playing field. And so I came here to Philadelphia, particularly because this was a district with an extremely high level of need. And I'm committed to making sure that I serve the city, in a way that will benefit its inhabitants. But also, I just really enjoy exposing people to new ways of thinking. I really enjoy, fostering creative thought, critical thought. It's very refreshing to see, a younger generation of people use their brains, because there are a lot of problems that we have in the world, and they're going to be solved by people who use their brains. And also,
one thing I realized that you have to make the lessons very interesting, with all the students. As a teacher, that is one thing that every good or outstanding teacher has to do. The lesson has to be interesting. You have to use technology, 21st century technology, to enhance learning and teaching. Students are into electronics. This generation of students, you want to make sure that you're using multiple means of expression, engagement, and representation, which means that you have to prepare your lesson in such a way that every student, you will be able to meet the learning needs of all the different students in your classroom. And another thing that I noticed is that you have to keep the students engaged. You have to keep them busy all the time. As a teacher, my experience was that if you give students a few minutes, without doing anything, just give students a few free minutes in class, then it will be really hard for you to take control of the class. Because once they start discussing side talks and other things, and they feel like they are not engaged, then there is some sort of disruption in your classroom. So it's always good to keep the students busy, challenge them sufficiently, explain the materials to them well, give them homework, provide them with sufficient, you can always one-on-one discussions, because you will notice that there are struggling students in your classroom. There's some students who will understand the concept immediately, and the other students that, as a teacher, you should be able to tell that they still need some help. So you can walk around, you can circulate the classroom and help those students who are in need.
I guess the key to making STEM programs work where there hasn't been one previously, or where the idea of having one is great, but in practicality it seems rather difficult, is to understand that a STEM program doesn't have to be one that uses fancy computer programs or has experts in all the time to discuss these horribly complex things. A STEM program, which includes technology, could be something as simple as, here are a few things you'd find in your house, maybe paper clips, clothespins, pipe cleaners, hot glue gun. Create something. Tell me what it is that you've created, how it works, why you created it, and what problem it solves. I think that people approach STEM as needing to be very dense math and engineering and lose the technology piece of it and the basic science inquiry piece of it at times, when we really don't need to. Even high school kids would very much excel when given an opportunity to be creative and build things out of nothing.
Well, as the dean this year, there's a student that stands out in my mind this year. His name is Daniel. And he came into the school having a lot of behavioral problems. He was always getting detention. He was always getting in trouble. He has the most, on record, he has the most detentions of any student in the school. He's been suspended. He's been had in-house. He's had so many behavioral problems. He was failing all of his classes. And I've worked with him and his mother all year, building plans, building structures for him, holding him accountable to behavioral standards. And I'm happy to say that this week he has made himself eligible to graduate the program, or to finish the program, provided that he passes all of his classes, which I think he's on his way to doing. I mean, it's not going to be a stellar A-B student coming out of this, but he has just demonstrated so much growth behaviorally and academically that it's been a struggle all year, and it's just so awesome. It's awesome right now.
Over the last 5 years, I've seen a number of students find difficulty in my classes. I've seen a number of students find success in my classes. I've seen a number of students sort of in the middle, floundering, not sure whether they were being successful or not being successful, and they really didn't know how to figure it out. I've also seen a number of students ask other students for help or work collaboratively to solve problems that they might not have even realized that they were having. And that's really what drives me to continue to dedicate my time outside of school to school, even though I don't have a whole lot of time to do so. Because I want to foster an environment where students don't have a problem going to one another and saying, listen, I don't understand this. I see that you do. Can you help me out? It's one of those things that can be the biggest difficulty in a classroom, but once you figure out how to do it, can be one of the most helpful things that you've ever done.
The students were very receptive. I had so many different forms of assessments, formative assessments, different ways of evaluating my students, just to make sure that they understood the material. And I'm really impressed. I'm really proud with the work we've done, or what we've accomplished this year. I'm thanking noyce for that support.
The best thing about my job is that aha moment when it hits a student that, hey, I figured this out, and it wasn't because Mr. Franklin gave me the answer, but it was because as he asked me questions, I came to some realization. I had some epiphany. And even better than hearing that from the kids is seeing their eyes light up when that moment occurs. You know it's happening as an educator. And it's probably one of the best feelings in the world.
Yeah, this isn't for everybody. This is not for everybody. This is not for every teacher. It's not for every counselor. It's not for every principal. It's not something, I honestly believe that the work that we do in inner cities is some of the most difficult work in the country. And it's not for everybody. Unfortunately, the salary structure doesn't mirror the difficulties that we encounter. But anybody who's in this will tell you that we're not doing it for the money. But money and salary usually can be an indicator for how difficult or how
Yes.
how much of a struggle the job can be, and the money does not reflect at all how difficult this job is. This is a very, very difficult job. It is. It will change you. It will challenge you. It will transform you. But that's what this work is. This work is about transforming. It's about transforming the kids. It's about transforming society. It's about transforming yourself.